Well, I like to be a lifelong learner. And so writing the book was really less about me writing the book and more about learning about writing a book. There are a lot of people, some people want to hire somebody that helps them do this. I actually did it all myself. I loved the learning process of this. But the one thing I really learned was, I didn't write this book for me. I wrote this book for others. And what I mean by that is I've been a mentor for many years. I've had people say, do you have this written down? I'd give a speech. People would say, do you have this written down? I didn't have it written down. So that's when I started thinking, oh, I could write this down. And so this was really less about, I mean, my picture's on the cover just so you know that I believe in everything in here, but what space got to do with it? 10 life lessons for personal growth.
Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on when are you watching us. And thank you for being part of the Material Business Podcast. My name is Monica Hernandez, and I am your host. And I have a super, super special guest. Shelly, thank you so much for accepting the invite and being here with us.
Well, thank you, Monica. It's such a pleasure joining you. You have such a unique podcast platform and audience. It's my honor to be with you.
Thank you. Thank you for those kind words. It's always, I was telling you before we recorded, it warms my heart when people say they took something out of it and they like what they're listening to. So for everyone that is not subscribed, please subscribe or send this to someone that might need to hear this episode, or better yet, the whole series of episodes. So we have lots to talk about. You come from a different industry, the background on the technical side, being a female in STEM, but from a little different background than the materials. However, you're also an entrepreneur and you have all that transitioning and transformation. So we'll talk about all those areas when we're going to explore this episode. Do you want to tell the audience who is Shelly?
Absolutely. Well, again, I'm so honored to be with you and thank you for inviting me. I always like to say my journey has four chapters. And so that first chapter is right out of high school, I joined the United States Air Force because, I didn't have money to go to college. I really didn't know what I wanted to study in college, even if I did have the money to go. And I really wanted to see the world. And to me at that time, the United States Air Force was the best way to do that. And so I did 12 years as an enlisted airman and I got stationed in Turkey and Germany. So I got to see the world. I was classified a personnel specialist or human resources. So I got a skill set and I was able to use tuition assistance, which allowed me to go to school at night. So I then had the way to go to school. So I kind of accomplished all the activities and the goals that I had that were preventing me from going to the university. So after 12 years as an enlisted airman, I applied and was accepted and became an officer in the United States Air Force. And I became a space acquisition officer or space procurement. I bought the space assets like rockets and ground stations and satellites. And so that started my 25-year career in the space industry when that happened. And I did that for a while. I did all that procurement where I rockets and satellites and ground stations, and I taught at Defense Acquisition University. I taught about space acquisition. I worked on Capitol Hill for 5 years as a budget and appropriation liaison, a legislative liaison, securing the budget for the Air Force. So understanding how policy and legislation work to create the outcomes that hopefully are implemented in the military. And then after 29 years in the Air Force, I retired and I started my third chapter, which was becoming the chief operating officer at Space Foundation, which was fantastic, getting to lead an amazing team that does work globally related to education and putting on a world-class event called Space Symposium, bringing together the global space community. I did 9 wonderful years there. And at that point, I did another pivot. In 2024, I resigned and started my own company, SB Global LLC, because I was really passionate about being the bridge from the space industry to the general public. Many times, as you said, when people think about space, they don't think it's about them, that it's not relative. Why are we talking about it? But space is actually part of our everyday lives. Right now, we're using a communication platform. All these communication platforms, Riverside, Zoom, Microsoft Teams, are all from the Apollo era space program when we wanted to communicate with astronauts. So right now, we're using a form of space technology right now to communicate. So whether you know it or not, space is part of your everyday life. And there are opportunities not only for astronauts and rocket scientists or military officers like myself to be part of space. Now, space is for everyone, and we need everyone to think about how they can utilize space in their daily life and find career opportunities in the space industry. So, again, I'm so happy to join you to be able to share this insight that if you're already in the space industry, you just don't know it.
This is I think, one of the best descriptions from someone that has come to the podcast. And not only have you broken your areas, like the chapters of your life, but also you have given all those pivot points, which sometimes we are so afraid, right? We are so comfy in our own little bubble, and then we don't want to go out of that comfort zone. And then pivoting is always, facing those fears and then finding what is outside of that comfort zone. So thank you for that super amazing introduction. And I agree with you. Yesterday, I was speaking with my son, and he's 12. He turned 12 yesterday. So, anyway, he told me why almost all the kids, when they're like 6 or 7, they all want to be astronauts. And then when they have these books of the space, they all want to be there. And then as we grow up, we don't want that anymore. And I was like, oh, that's a very interesting question. And you just said it. Sometimes we think that is out of our reach, is for people that have different skill sets. And looking at it from the perspective you brought, is we are all using right now space, and then we are all there. So how was that? I want to ask you, how was that being a female in those industries, that, the aviation and aerospace industry? What is your perception of from your side?
Well, I have to say I really didn't know anything different because I joined the Air Force at 18 years old. So I don't really know what somebody in a non-military aerospace career field what that looks like. But for me, I always looked at it as equality. You know, we're all in the military wearing a uniform, we have a title, we have the same opportunities to advance and get promoted. And like I did, after 12 years as an enlisted airman, I went to school at night. I completed my bachelor's and master's degrees. I applied and became an officer. Now, I wasn't selected on the first try. And I'll tell you, you don't always get there the first time you try. You may have to try a few times, and we can talk about that more later. But I tried again and I was selected the second time. In the military, although maybe not everyone in the room or sitting at the table was a female, I was at the table and was a woman. So I was representing. And I think as my journey over the last 35 years in the aerospace industry, starting in the 1980s, the mid 80s, I'm going to highlight, I'm not that old yet, but a lot has changed in the space industry and the aerospace industry where maybe you would see only males sitting at the table. Then maybe when I was there, it might have been one woman, but now there's multiple women and there's multiple career opportunities. And so I would say as the pendulum has swung from the Apollo era, especially where, you can all look at mission control during the Apollo era and there's like one woman in the room to where we are today, where we have a lot of diversity of men and women of backgrounds. So, yes, we need those STEM professionals like you talked about, but we also need business professionals and entrepreneurs and investors and policymakers and speakers and podcast people. So we need all the career fields now in the space industry because it's an open commercial entity now. It's not just run by the government. So there's lots of opportunity. And so when you ask me that type of question, I don't really know anything different. And I know that I'm excited that I was part of the industry where I was. I learned a lot. I grew a lot. I had men that were mentors and champions and role models for me. And I hope now in my career, I'm able to be a mentor, role model, and a champion for both men and women.
And that's amazing to hear. And I think we were speaking before we hit recording, and then that's one of the things that we wanted to highlight, like the importance of seeking help. And sometimes, like, nobody has told me, or I don't think anyone, that we have to know everything, but that sometimes we kind of impose that on ourselves, that I need to know that, and I need to, as an entrepreneur, I need to do all that by myself, and then not seeking for help is not in our best interest.
Well, I think as an entrepreneur, your number one asset is your team.
Mhm.
So yes, as an entrepreneur, you do have to wear many hats, especially when you start bootstrapping, like I did last year. I'm like the CEO and the ops and the, marketing. But as your company grows, you have to hire the right people or interns or consultants or however you want to module your workforce. And so it's really about the team. Every entrepreneur I've interviewed for a book series I'm doing has said, one of their number one resources is the team. Having the right team that supports you when you're reaching for the stars, as well as on the day maybe you had a rocket failure and it blew up on the pad. You need a team that's with you, and you need a team that's different than you because you bring certain skill sets to the table. You need a team that complements you and that can help you see your blind spots. And sometimes people don't want to hear their blind spots, but that's part of building relationship and trust as a leader, that you want to hear all that feedback so that you can improve and be a better leader, what ultimately helps your company be better, grow faster.
Absolutely. And that has been also, I think, one of the biggest lessons, not only in the entrepreneurial side for me, but also when you are like anywhere really, is like, how are you putting yourself out to accomplish what you want, with skills that are not only unique to you. Like, you need those people that are mirrors that are helping you see what is that you're missing, and potentially they have experienced it, or they have cultural background on it, or they have something else, and have traveled all like during your younger years in the Air Force. I guess that gave you that exposure to see, here they do things very different, and then how can I bring to the table things that are appropriate. So it's very interesting. We were also talking about mentors and allies, and people that help you on that journey, and then sometimes it's not like a formal thing, but is something that is someone that will become almost like your friend, that you will go for advice. And you had a very nice way of putting it together. Do you want to share it?
Well, how I look at it is there are some mentors who are really there in your journey for a short period of time, and it's really objective based. So, sometimes people want a mentor who helps them get into a master's program or a PhD program, and those are very finite, skill related reasons. I'm not necessarily that type of mentor. I mean, I'm happy, sometimes I have some entrepreneurs who ask some very specific questions and I give answers. But I'm more of a mentor who's a coach, a life coach. It's less about today, but it's more about you as a person and your future and how you're going to grow and what's the right path. And many of the people I've met that have asked me to be mentors through there are several mentoring programs I've gone through. The United Nations Office of Outer Space Affairs, Space for Women had a wonderful mentoring program. Women Tech Network has a wonderful mentoring program. Space Generation Advisory Council. So there's mentoring programs out there. Many times I'll volunteer and serve in one of those capacities. But what I've learned is I actually build a relationship with the protege. And it's less about your tangible problem today, but how do we build a relationship that helps you become self sufficient and make decisions along the way? And then many of these people I've now become friends with for years because mentoring is not just one way. Sometimes it can be, maybe you want advice and you just want somebody to kind of tell you what to do. But for me, it's more about let's have a conversation, let's walk through it. And then ultimately, how do you make the decision that's the best decision for you? And then over time, you want to keep in touch with people. And then many of the people, let's just talk every month. So there's several people I started out mentoring, and now, every month we take up and they give me advice as well. Last year when I launched my company, I had one of my people who was a protege who became an entrepreneur in the space industry. Then she was kind of a mentor for me last year as I was making that transition and the pivot and giving me advice and have you tried this? Have you thought of that? So I look at mentorship in three ways. There's mentors, champions, and coaches. So that mentor is that first one who might say, I'm and it's seed round funding, and I need a mentor who can help me get through this seed round, period. So you bring in an expert who can show you how to do that. And when you get through that seed round, then, you're not going to stay in touch, but you don't really need them in that role anymore because you brought them in for that one specific thing. Then there are champions. Now, champions may be several levels removed from you in your chain of command, or they may not even be in your organization, but they know where you need to pivot, what hurdles you need to hit to continue to grow and develop, and they help get you there. Maybe they do a letter of recommendation. Maybe they get your name into looking at the CEO so you can get an interview for a job or be an intern. So they may not be a day-to-day thing, but they may be there when you're trying to get a job, get an internship, make that next step. They're there to help you do that. And I've done that many times too. And then the third one is what I described, building that coaching, life coaching relationship of give and take, where one day maybe I'm mentoring and another day maybe I'm receiving mentoring from the other person. It's a two-way street and we both grow and develop through the process. So all three forms of mentoring are important at different points of your journey, of your personal journey, as well as your professional. I just know that I'm a better mentor as a life coach than the other two. Well, I guess I do the other two as well, but I prefer building that relationship that then becomes a lasting relationship over time.
Absolutely, absolutely. And then as you were talking, I was reaching in my head to all the people that have been in my journey, both in the technical side or in the company side or in the leadership side, or even, as a mom. And then all those people that have come with those all different various roles that you mentioned. So it really is amazing on how we can tackle, and that confirms what we have said here a lot with many other guests that have come to the podcast, and is that we need to start reaching out and then get out of our bubble and then collaborate if that is what we want to do, advance and then get some other ideas. Which brings me to the next question. You have pivoted in your life for various reasons. One of the fears, like I mentioned before, from lots of people is this is very unknown. I don't know what is going to happen. Should I make the jump or should I not? What is your motivator, or what do you think is motivates you to go outside of that and then pivot?
One of the big motivators I've had is I've seen when I was young in my career, I would talk to people that were later in their career and they had regrets. They maybe regretted they didn't try. They didn't take the risk. They stayed in their comfort zone. They stayed safe. And maybe they needed to. Maybe they had a family. Maybe they had kids in college. So, you have to make the best decision you can at where you are in your career. But I saw people that maybe regretted that they didn't try something different. And so that has always been a motivator for me. You can try, even if the odds are against you, and that's one of the chapters in my new book. Try anyways, even when the odds are against you, because you never know. And you might fail the first time. You know what failure is? Just go FAIL. First attempt in learning. You learn from that failure, you improve, and you try again. And you might have to try again, and you might have to try again. So if you're passionate about it, you'll figure it out. You'll find people who can help you. Don't give up. Try anyways, even when the odds are against you. You don't want to look back in 30 or 40 years and be one of those people who says, I wish I had tried to start my own company. I wish I had tried to do this. I wish I had gone and got my PhD. I wish, I wish, I wish, I wish. Be one of those people who looks back and says, man, it was a great adventure. It was an awesome journey. There were some ups and downs, and maybe I shouldn't have done that, but I did, and it was a great learning experience. Take everything as a learning experience. And you know what? You could try something and you could say, I don't like this. And
Mhm.
that's okay, because now you know, and now you can pivot to what you might like. One of the easiest things to know is what you don't like. It's hard to know all the things you might like, but if you try vanilla ice cream and you don't like it, you know the next time you don't need to try vanilla ice cream. So try different things. Take different classes, meet different people, join different networking groups, try different things. If you're not sure where your passion is yet, try different things until you start finding a place that feels right. that you feel that you found your tribe, your people, the people you want to enjoy talking to and connecting with and sharing insights and sharing stories, because then you found the place where you belong. But it may take a while to get there, and don't be afraid to try different things. Growing up, I've always been called a joiner. I joined a lot of things. I joined the tennis team, I joined the track team, I joined this organization or that organization. And I just kind of, you tried different things until you found people and things that you enjoyed doing. And then I knew that I found my place. And I love being in the space industry. I love connecting with people and talking about technology and space in our daily lives. I know this is what my passion is and where I want to be every day. And I hope everyone that's listening finds their place as well.
That's so important. And we were talking about that authenticity part. And that is one of the reasons that we are here, right? Is someone introduced me to someone that I interviewed, and then that someone interviewed me, like, and then it's a ripple effect. And then here we are. You were introduced by me by other person that came into the podcast, and I was introduced to her by someone else. So it's all these connections that make it happen. And it is all that trying. Like, what is the worst thing that can happen? That the person says no, and that's it. So it's analyzing also the risk. I really loved some, like my last panelist. She said we tend to overinflate the worst consequence. So it's like, how sometimes we say, oh my God, if that happened, I'll die. Well, you won't really die, honestly. It might be embarrassing. It might be you look at that and you'll be like, okay, I should have done it this way. But that was the decision you took at the time with the information you had in hands. So it's just a learning experience. And you might have hear me saying this a lot. I think the audience always hear me saying this. Like the name of the company I created is Infinity Growth, because I really think we come to Earth to learn and sharing that knowledge. So that's really my passion, I guess, is to get these knowledges. Like, wow, I have never sat down here and spoke with someone that had 35 years experience in the aerospace industry. How cool is that? So reaching out, right? It's like reaching out, being there, and then not being afraid, I think is one of the biggest things that we overcome. So anyway, anyone that is listening to this, if you're afraid of trying new things, just try it. What is the worst thing that can happen?
Exactly. Just try it. And you can go to different groups, whether it's in person in your community. Maybe there's incubators and accelerators. Maybe there's young professional networking groups. Or you can even do it online. Like there's some great global programs for young space people, like Space Generation Advisory Council. And they have not only international, but they have group events. They have things for lawyers and people interested in water and agriculture and technology and policy. And so you can try different things. There's Women Tech Network for women and allies, so men too. They're looking to find their way in the tech industry and find opportunities to connect with like-minded people. There's World Space Week, which is this year is about living in space. So there's lots of different organizations that also you don't even have to leave your home. You could try some of these online. You can meet people, you can reach out on LinkedIn, maybe they answer, maybe they don't. People are busy, but you can also connect both in person as well as in these other online networks that can help you also grow and develop and find new connections on LinkedIn as well. I think LinkedIn is wonderful. I have people reach out on LinkedIn all the time that I don't know, but they say similar to what you said. Hey, do you want to do a podcast? Or I have a radio show, or I need a speaker. And LinkedIn is a wonderful connector as well. And you can find a lot of different ways to connect on LinkedIn.
Absolutely, absolutely. So that brings me to the next topic, and that is, and we touched a little bit on the pivoting, the transformation. So you decided to leave the corporate world and then jump into, when I did that, I was in one conference, and then someone said, you have to jump off the cliff and build your wings on the way down. And I was like, oh my God, that's so scary. But I did it, right? So, and you did it too. Congratulations. How was that transition? Like, what was the push point for you?
I just knew that I was at a point in my career where I wanted to be able to give more and have a bigger impact. As I said, I've been a mentor for many years, or I've given speeches, and many times people would say, "Oh, do you have this written down, or do you have a book, or how can I learn more?" And I didn't have any of those things. I just gave a talk or I mentored, and I just realized 2023 over the Christmas holiday that I was one of those people that was at a point where I was ready to pivot to the next thing. It was time. Every journey has a beginning and an end, and you have to recognize. So it's easy to know when the beginning is day one on the job, but you go through the journey, and I realized that that journey had an end, and I was ready for the next journey. I had thought about and talked to my husband, oh, one day I'm going to do this, and one day I'm going to do that, and one day, and my husband said, "What are you waiting for? Do it now." And so I did. I came back to the office in January 2024 and I said, "You know what? I really have these other things I really want to do that I'm passionate about." I resigned and didn't have a total plan, but I'd already been a speaker and some things. Knew I wanted to write a book, and so just said, this is my goal for this year. And you have that first year you start being an entrepreneur and you're not making money. Fortunately, my husband, we had to we were able to work out the financial piece, was able to support me. So having that support system that believed in me and supported me. And then as an entrepreneur, you think it's easier than working for somebody else. You work for somebody else, it's 8 or 9 hours a day. You work for yourself, and it's 7 days a week, 12 or 16 hours a day, especially in the beginning as you're trying to get momentum. It just feels like you're in quicksand. I don't know about you, but when I first launched, I felt like I was in quicksand those first few months, just trying to get things going, letting people know what I was doing, figure out my messaging, what's my talking points now. What am I really doing? People are like, well, what are you doing? And it took time. That's the other thing. It does take time to figure it out. So now, as I came into the end of December, my book came out. My speaking things are picking up for this year, both nationally and internationally. The futurist contracts and strategy works coming in. So the process does work, but it does take time, and you have to be patient, and you have to be patient with yourself. It is hard to work 12 or 16-hour days, and one time I felt overwhelmed and my husband said, "Aren't you the CEO? Why are you working 12 or 16 hours a day if you're feeling overwhelmed? You make the decision." So that's the other thing as an entrepreneur. You make the decision, and you have to make sure that you take care of yourself first. My husband was a firefighter, so we all know first responders. As a first responder, you have to take care of yourself first. You have to put your oxygen mask on when you're in the plane first before you can help others. And so as an entrepreneur, like we talked about earlier, you feel like you have to do it all and you have to do it all today, but you can't. You can't answer every email. You can't do every proposal. You have to do the best you can every day and find those successes. And I also write them down. Write down those small things you're doing every day, and I have that here too. I write it in just a simple notebook, broken down by months, and then I can go back and look at, oh, wow, I did this big event in Europe. I did write the book. Oh, I did 13 articles for Forbes last year. Oh, I did this. And then you can start seeing how those daily things lead to these big things. And I'm going to caveat that as you're working through those daily things, email can be overwhelming, but you have to be able to filter out. Email can be a distraction. Some days you just got to shut email off and you have to focus on what's most important. Is it writing that article, doing the proposal, responding to a client? Sometimes you have to shut out the things that can be distractions. Not that those people who are sending emails are not important. You will get to those, but they may not be the thing you must focus on today. So you really need to prioritize. So I'll kind of end it there. I have a ton of lessons I learned last year, but those are some of the big ones. You have to prioritize, you have to manage your energy level, and you have to realize that it just is going to take time and just be consistent every day.
That's amazing. I had someone, one of my the leaders I have, she said to me one time, you need to separate what is urgent to what is important. And I was very young in my career. I was like 23 years old, and I was like, isn't that urgent important the same thing? Like it was hard for me to shoot. But then once this is really how you can be effective at what you're doing and achieving those big things, because if you plant a seed today, you will not take the fruit tomorrow. It will take a little water and sun, and then some care for it to grow into that fruit or vegetable, whatever it is that you're eating. So it's the same here, is whatever your important is, that is. And that brings me to the next thing, and is you touched in a very important point on self-care and self-love, and then all those things that are very neglected because we are in a society that is like, I worked 16 hours, I'm the super boss, and then I expect my team to work 18. And then that is burning out people a lot and is not getting the best out of the team. So coming back to our first, like the first point that we discussed on having a good team, you need to be a good leader. And you can only be that, in my experience, by leading yourself.
Absolutely, I completely agree. I'm going to relate that also to emotional intelligence, that emotional intelligence of self-awareness. I know that at some points when I'm feeling tired or low energy, that's a time to take a break. I'm not good at answering emails. I might make typos. My brain is not as best. I'm a very much an early morning person. I like to work out, and while I'm on the treadmill, thinking about my day and I'm excited and I work. And then in the afternoon, I get a little less. And that might be where you answer the email or you take a break and go have lunch or do something else to pivot away. And then as the evening comes, I get my second wind and can pick back up. So you need to understand how your mental capacity and works as well so that you can capitalize on when you're the best, when your mind is the sharpest, so that you can do those urgent tasks with the best brain power and energy you have. And then you put those other things. Like I said, maybe when you have lower energy, that's a good time to call some of those people you want to call and talk to and catch up. And you're not in a rush. You're not thinking about all the five things you need to do. When I'm hyper energized in the morning, I'm like thinking about all the things I'm doing and all the tasks. And then as you get a little more calm during the day, it's like, oh, now I'm ready to have a cup of tea and talk to somebody and, really listen. We talked about the importance of listening as a leader too. So it can help you schedule your day and your projects and how you want to interact with your team. But as a leader, you need to be refreshing as well. Not just your team. Go on vacation, go exercise, get outside, spend time with your family, because those retreats away from the office help you energize and come back with new ideas and new excitement and new passion. I took the holidays off. I mean, I checked some emails, we're doing this in early 2025, and some people work through the holidays or work through New Year's. But I kind of spent time with family and maybe checked email, but was like, I'll do that after. So I'm doing a lot of catch up coming out of the holidays. But I have to tell you, I'm starting to outline the second book in my series, and a lot of ideas started sparking and people I wanted to talk to and outlining the chapter and, ooh, this needs to go here. The minute I kind of pulled the daily day activities off my brain, it was able to be creative. So remember that you need to make sure you're giving, especially if you're the CEO, you need to be creative. You need to be visionary. You need to be thinking how you can motivate and excite your team as well as your investors and your customers and your stakeholders. And if you're stuck in the day to day, which is important, you're not going to be able to do that visionary outreach, strategic things that you need to do as the CEO with all the stakeholders.
Absolutely. Can agree more. So you talked about the book. So where can we get it? Congratulations, first off. And maybe the question will be, what is the one lesson that you learned in this journey as a writer and publisher?
Well, I like to be a lifelong learner. And so writing the book was really less about me writing the book and more about learning about writing a book. There are a lot of people, some people want to hire somebody that helps them do this. I actually did it all myself. I loved the learning process of this. But the one thing I really learned was, I didn't write this book for me. I wrote this book for others. And what I mean by that is I've been a mentor for many years. I've had people say, do you have this written down? I'd give a speech. People would say, do you have this written down? I didn't have it written down. So that's when I started thinking, oh, I could write this down. And so this was really less about, I mean, my picture's on the cover just so you know that I believe in everything in here, but what space got to do with it? 10 life lessons for personal growth. They're my stories, but I also interviewed 30 global thought leader stories that are included in here with real actionable takeaways because I wrote this book for you. It's not about me.
Amazing. And I think this is one of the, like, the first speech that I heard from John Maxwell, and he brought the idea of servant leadership. And I really stuck with that. And that is why we are doing here today, right? Giving it to the audience. If you're a young person that ever thought space is out of your reach, we are telling you here, yes, you can. If you ever thought writing a book is very complex, different, difficult, I can't, we are telling you, you can. There is almost, I'll say there is no barriers other than what we impose on ourselves.
The sky is not the limit. There
I
are no
love that.
limits. And this book is good for everyone. Whether you want to be in the space industry, you're a leader, you're a future leader, you're not in the space industry. These insights, the people I interviewed in here are former presidents of countries, they're policymakers, there's astronauts, there's military, there's medical doctors, there's people from Africa and Europe and India and New Zealand and Japan. So no matter where you are, you will find somebody in here that you can identify with. They have a background, they might be from your region. That was the important thing, is that these aren't just lessons from the space industry. These are life lessons that can apply to anyone.
I can't wait to read it. We'll put all the links in this episode so people can have the ability to search for that. This podcast goes so fast, and every time that I look at the watch, it's like, oh my God, have we already spoken for that much time? What is one last thing that perhaps you want to tell the audience, people that are listening to us, and what would you say to them?
Well, one of the last chapters in the book is about passion, patience, perseverance. And so as we leave on today's story, keep that in mind. Passion is the rocket fuel that ignites you. Perseverance is what keeps you going, but it's patience that sustains you. So you need to have all three of those things to be successful and accomplish your goals in life. When you pick up the book, you'll read some great stories about people in the book and their passion, patience, and perseverance. And just remember, one step a day will get you 365 more steps next year. So you don't have to do it all today. Break it into small pieces. Write it down. Put it on sticky notepads. Put them on your wall. Write down all those little steps you're taking each day. And then when you feel like you're not making any progress, look at the wall with all the sticky notes, or look at your notebook with all the things you've done, because that will sustain you. Passion, perseverance, patience.
I love it. Shelly, thank you so much. This has been we have given a lot of tips to the audience. I guess that anyone that is at any stage in their careers, in their lives, may have something that can stick to them by listening to this episode today. I really am appreciative of your time, and then for having this podcast recorded for the material business community. For the community, thank you so much for being here. I'm looking forward to seeing you the next time. And then we hope that you keep on sharing and sending these episodes to whomever you think will benefit from. So thank you so much once again, and hope to talk to you soon.
Thank you. I'll see you around the galaxy.
Well, I love that for sure.